Guys, and welcome back to the House of Devlin. I'm Big Al Devlin. This video is all about fundamentalism and liberalism within religion specifically. I'm going to give you an example of a fundamental religion, or a religion that is fundamental at least at its core. I'm not saying its practitioners are fundamentalists, but I will categorically state that the religion itself is fundamental if taken word for word exactly as it is, and I will also give you a religion which is my own, Nordic paganism, that is liberal at its core, and the advantage of having a liberal religion and why that in its own right makes it superior, and why it's a shame that there are so few of us left. Pagans were a dying race, so to speak. We're a dying group of people, and this is my way of trying to bring paganism back to the world, to bring more and more of the younger generations back to the old ways. But regardless of my motivations, this is my discussion. Let's look at the religion of fundamentalism. At the moment, it's a very prevalent religion. I believe the mass majority of the world believes in this particular religion, and that is Islam. Islam is practiced by people called Muslims, and their holy text is called the Quran. The Quran is seen by Muslims, by Islamists, as being the literal word of God. It is in Arabic, and there has been several refusals. As far as I'm aware, there's never been a translation of the text from Arabic into any other language. There's been several refusals. There have been requests made, but never ever have whoever's in charge allowed the text to be translated from Arabic into say English. And the argument for it is, well, this is the word of God. God spoke to Muhammad in Arabic, and so I believe it was Arabic, and as a result, this is the message he gave. If we translate it into English, it is no longer the message that God gave. It loses all its meanings, it loses all its reverberance, it loses all of its impact, so to speak. It no longer is the word of God. It can no longer be taken with, seriously. And so this is why within Islam there are, as I say, a very fundamental religion, because if this book literally is the word of God, literally the word of God, the message that God gave to Muhammad when he was in the cave for 3 days, and then had Muhammad had someone then write it down for him because he was illiterate himself, then had it written down. If this literally is the word of God, why on earth would you argue with any of it? Allah within Islam is a supreme being. He is a supreme being. That means he's all powerful, all knowing, all loving. He has no flaws. He is perfect. He has all the power that he could ever imagine and more. Okay, his power, his vastness goes beyond comprehension. And so if this is the case, why on earth should you ever argue with the text of the Quran? You shouldn't, is the answer. You shouldn't. And this is why people do not, and this is why it is a fundamental religion. And of course, within this text, there are certain verses, which I'll get into in other videos, that show, for example, inequality between men and women. And of course, that potentially, according to, they say it's your interpretation, but literally, word for word, literally would mean that it is allowed to go. Basically, God has given permission to practitioners of Islam, Islam, to go out and murder the heathen, so to speak, and to be rewarded for such. But that's for another video. As I say, this is for that particular part of the Quran. I'm sure is for the fundamentals within a fundamental religion. That is for the 1%, so to speak, who are willing to do such an evil act. However, in contrast to this, you do have what's called paganism. Now, I say it's paganism because there are several branches of paganism. There's Celtic paganism, there's Iberian paganism, which is essentially the same as Celtic paganism. There's Nordic paganism, my form of paganism. There's Britannic paganism, which is again very similar to Celtic paganism. And I'm sure there are other forms of paganism that I've forgotten. In fact, there is. There are so many different forms of paganism. But the problem is we give ourselves those labels, and as we do, we segregate ourselves. So instead of being 5 individual groups of pagan, we should say, no, let's take away the labels, and what's more, that 5 or 1. 5, 1. That's what we should do. We should unite. We should become one people, because it's the only way that pagans will survive the generations to come, and not only survive but prosper and hopefully propagate and become a greater power in this world. Now, paganism in itself is a very liberal religion. Why? Because of the way that it is taught, in contrast to, for example, to the Quran, which is literally the word of God, or even the Bible, which is a religious text that is to be taken very seriously by its followers. Paganism is taught through oration. It is taught through the tongue. It is taught from an elder to a student, to a teacher to a student, essentially, and that student over time will then also become a teacher to the teacher himself. And basically the beautiful way that I like to look at it, because pagans have a way of looking at things as they would exist in nature. The teacher is one tree. His knowledge and his wisdom grow deep. His roots grow deep within the soil, and he talks and he teaches to the student, who is allowed to ask questions to say, why is this done? Why is this right? Why is this wrong? Why shouldn't it be done like this? And as that student asks those questions, and the elder answers, well, no, because of this, because of that, or simply, I don't know. If there's no answer, there is no answer. Go out and find the answer for yourself, because I'm too old to go seek that answer. But you seek that answer, so that your student, who you will have one day, will have, when they ask the question, you will be able to answer that question for yourself. And what happens every time a question gets asked of their tutor, of their teacher, the student, little does he know, his roots grow deeper as his wisdom and knowledge grow deeper, but his roots become entwined with that of the teacher. They become like this. And the process of teaching paganism from teacher to student in such a way, through an oratory way, is a beautiful thing, because it allows a bond to be formed, and it allows a mind to be formed and developed. The student learns not only what the teacher has taught, but learns so much more, because they've asked questions, they've been allowed to think, they've been allowed to question, they've been allowed to say, no, I don't agree with that, I see it like this, and this is how I'm going to see it. And on the large scale of things, as long as the message of the story itself is taken on board, then there's no harm in this. This is allowed. Paganism is it does allow for this to happen, as long as the main message remains the same. Because of course, the paganism, just like the Bible, and I assume the Quran, but certainly the Bible, which I've read many times, in the Bible there are many stories, and as children you ask, well, what's the moral behind this story? What's the moral behind this story? It means do not steal. It means do not hurt your fellow man, or whatever the story is and whatever it may mean. The same exists in paganism. There are stories that exist. And behind every story, there is a moral, there is a life story. There is something that someone before you, a long time before you, had learnt and decided that to teach this life lesson, to teach this moral, this ethic, to teach the future generations to act like this because it's the best way to act, that they should tell it as a story, because of course stories can of course be told to children, and children listen to the stories, and whether they take in the message, it doesn't matter. Eventually they become to understand the message, and as a result, when they grow to be adults, they already understand the message. They don't need to be told that this story means this, that this story means that when their mind is set, it doesn't matter. They have already learned the life stories of the generations before them, and then of course they can go to a teacher and take further studies. They can take further knowledge by questioning them of the particular stories that they may have been told. For example, this is one of my personal examples. During the creation of the gods and of the cosmos being the universe essentially, there were two realms, Muspelheim and Niflheim, the land of fire and the land of ice. At one point these realms expanded and exploded essentially at such a rate that the gap between them, which was nothingness, where a place where not even silence or darkness existed, become flooded with these two realms. And eventually of course the realms met. Fire met ice, and fire as a result melted the ice and formed water, and the ice caused the fire to form steam, and so on and so forth. And in all this chaos of mixing of ice and fire, there came a force of creation called Odhumbla. Traditionally, Odhumbla is presented as a cow, and this to me is something that seems very childish. I will admit that. My own religion, I look at it and I think, this is childish. It is a cow. Now, it may very well be a cow, and I may be wrong. And if I go to the afterworld and I ever was to meet Odhumbla, not that I would, because of course he lives in a different realm to where men go when they die. But if I was to ever meet Odhumbla and he was a cow, I'd go, you know what, mate? I'm so sorry. I was wrong. But it doesn't matter, because what I see Odhumbla as is simply like gravity, as a force. Odhumbla didn't seem to have a personality. He never spoke. He never acted in any way other than what was in his nature, and his nature was pure creation. Odhumbla was the force of creation. He gave birth and nourished the gods themselves. Now, he literally physically didn't give birth to the gods. He found them buried within the ice of Niflheim, and he saved them by licking away the ice, by essentially melting away the ice and nourishing them with his milk. Now, it's obvious to me, because Nordic paganism is a very old religion. It's a religion that goes back to at least the Stone Age, if not before. So we could be looking at 30 to 40,000 years of old religion, but a minimum of 10,000 years old. Back then, people did not have words for force, for energy. They only had the words for the things that they had experience of. Today we can describe gravity, for example. Back then they say if you jump up, you come down. They didn't know why you came down, you just did. Now we can explain it, well, it's the force of gravity. And it's much the same as that. To me, Odhumbla is the name given simply to the force of creation. It was an energy force that went around and energized or reawakened the gods that were buried within the snow, nourished them, gave them life, just in the same way that Odin gave the original man and woman life with the breath of ecstasy. And it went around and it didn't discriminate. It gave life to both gods that were creative in nature, such as Odin and his father before that, the gods of the Aesir tribe, but he also gave life to the giants. In fact, the very first life being that he ever gave life to was Ymir, the origin of the giants, the very first giant that there was. And Ymir was basically a god that was full of jealousy and spite, and he was the first god ever to be killed by another god, because in Nordic paganism, gods can be killed. Odin, Vili and Ve joined up together and they killed Ymir because he was jealous of the beauty and of the creational aspect, essentially, of the Aesir tribes. If he couldn't have it, then no one could, was Ymir's attitude, essentially. And so Odin, Vili and Ve simply defended themselves and destroyed the giant Ymir. Now, I've gone a little bit too much with the story there, but what I'm trying to say is the force of Odhumbla, that, as I say, I don't see as even though I have it tattooed on me as a bull. I don't know if you can see because of the light, but I have tattooed on my right shoulder the tattoo of a bull that represents Odhumbla, because I connect to him as a bull. I don't mind seeing him as a bull, but to me, really deep down in my mind, if I'm truly honest, I just see him as a force. But how do I tell my tattoo artist, draw some energy on my right shoulder? I can't do that. And I wanted to show respect to Odhumbla because he is the source of all creation, the source of all life, and I believed he deserved the respect of being on my skin, my sacrifice of flesh, so to speak. He deserved to be honoured in such a way that I would bear his markings upon me, but I changed it to represent something that meant more to me, and as a result I gained a closer connection to Odhumbla. Not only am I not now embarrassed or thinking, oh, this sounds a bit childish, there was a cow or bull or hermaphrodite cow, as it was, that gave life to the gods and stuff. I'll just go, there was a force of energy called Odhumbla that many believe took the form of a cow, but be it what it is, whatever form it took, it doesn't matter. It was a force of creation that gave birth, gave the breath of ecstasy to the gods themselves, and then they too did the same to us. Odin gave us life. He carved us from wood and then gave us the breath of ecstasy. And so really, Odhumbla, to me, that's how liberalism within my religion has aided me. It's allowed me to form a deeper connection with certain parts of the teachings. I've not changed the moral of the story. The moral of the story is, well, there isn't really one. It's simply the creation of the universe. Does Genesis have a moral? Well, yeah, it really does. Its moral is that women are the root of all evil. That's it, really. But here, does this particular story have a moral? I'm trying to think. That all life... Well, yeah, it does. It is that all life, be it good or evil, is born from the same thing, and that, it's born. No, it doesn't have a moral. I'm talking shit. If it does have a moral, I can't see deep enough into the story that it does have a moral. And if you can explain to me what the moral, if there is a moral behind this story, or whether it's just simply a story, an explanation as to how we all got here, how the gods were born, I would love to hear from you in the comment section to teach me. I'm a teacher. I've taught you this story and I've discussed liberalism and fundamentalism, as I hope you can see that paganism is a much more liberal religion. It's a religion that allows you to think. It's a religion that allows you to question. But as you can see here, it also creates questions and it provokes the mind, it provokes the spirit. And without that liberalism, you don't have true freedom. And paganism, unlike any other religion, does not seek to shackle you in chains, so to speak. You are not expected to give blind faith. If you disagree with something, you are allowed to say, I disagree with that. I will not accept that. I will do something about it. I will make it better. And that is essentially the power of liberalism, and I hope it's something I've never seen in any other religion before. There's always a very, very, very much a fundamental and ordered, structured system for believing in your gods. No one would dare question anything, but because of the nature in which the religion is taught, because of the nature of the religion itself being based around nature. That nature is ever changing, ever flowing, that life never stops, that time never stops, it just simply recycles itself. You see in the pagan belief system, you see that the religion has no way would it be fundamental religion. It couldn't be. If it did, it'd be contrary to its own existence. It would destroy itself. And so this is my video on why you should really consider perhaps taking a step towards the old ways. Forget the new religions if you wish. It's a big step to do. Or if you're lost and you're an atheist, as I was before a couple of years ago. I was an atheist my entire life. I knew that there was some gods looking after me, but I didn't know what gods they were. If you're lost, turn to paganism and you'll find answers. You'll find answers to everyday life occurrences, and the world will start making more sense. At the beginning it may not, but with a little bit of effort it will start to allow you to see the world for what it truly is. A beautiful place, but a place that must be respected. And I've said enough, but I hope the message is clear. Fundamentalism, liberalism, I know what my choice is. It's liberalism. Fuck fundamentalism. I don't want no part of it. I will not allow myself to be shackled in any way whatsoever by religion or otherwise, by fundamental or people who believe in fundamental things, or believe fundamentally in anything. Thank you guys. I hope what I've said has made sense, and I will see you soon.